Black Hill Energy, heating homes across County Armagh. Fill up your tank for a rainy day with County Armagh's fastest growing fuel company. For latest prices, visit our website at www.blackhillenergy.net or call us today on 028 38 344 223. Black Hill Energy, Ansborough Industrial Park, Lurgan.
Welcome once again to Armagh Eye's sports podcast, The Eye on the Ball. This is your host, Elaine Ingram. For this week's podcast, I had the great pleasure of speaking to Richard Bullick. Richard has been a journalist for a long time. He's a PR expert. He specialises in rugby and cricket, but he's also really well known for being a long-term advocate of females in sport in Armagh. He's sat on the executive committee for Armagh Ladies Gaelic Football Association, and he's also a non-executive director of Netball Northern Ireland. So he's the person you want to speak to when you want to know anything about what's going on. We had a great in-depth conversation about the state of sports for females in Armagh at the moment, where they're at and where they want to go and what's being done about it. He also has been to the ladies' semi-finals, where Armagh Harps had a great win over Shane O'Neill's on Saturday, and on Friday night before that, Carrickruppen saw off Grange. And Richard talks us through both of those games and also the games leading up to that. And he has plenty of stories to tell about the players involved too. On the men's GAA front, the final was decided over the weekend, with Maghery getting the better of Pearse Og, and in a really exciting second half, Crossmaglen Rangers made it past Killeavy, but they had to fight hard to do so. It was a fantastic game. I was at the athletic grounds myself, and I spoke to Crossmaglen captain James Morgan after the game. But before that, let's hear from Richard. So Richard, first of all, I want to congratulate you. You've just been reappointed to the Sport NI board. You've been there since, 2014, and you just got reappointed again?
Yeah, 1st of April 2014. I don't know what that date says, but it's normally 2 terms of 4 years maximum, but the Minister in her wisdom has sort of seen to bring me up to the end of March 2024, so that'll be 10 years, so definitely no early release there. But no, listen, it's good because ultimately, I mean, people maybe, if they're good enough, they want to pull on a green jersey and play for their country. I was obviously never of that level in sport, so to actually be involved in the governing body of sport in Northern Ireland is something that's fairly rewarding. And at times it's obviously difficult because you're dealing with a lot of things. People think you turn up at meetings and just talk about sport, but I think one of the things at the moment as well, and it's been a big thing both in the UK generally and in Ireland, especially in the south, the whole sort of the rising tide of female sport. And I know certainly that's something Caroline McKillen, the acting minister at the moment, when she appointed me initially in her previous spell as minister, she was very keen because I've been, as you know, an advocate for female sport over a long period of time, even maybe before. Thankfully, the profile had improved across the board like it has now, although there's still a long way to go. And I think that's important as well because you've covered female sport locally yourself as well. And the commitment is there and the stories are there. So certainly within the board, I mean, we've got obviously a remit of governance and finance and a lot of things, but certainly flying the flag for female sport is something that I'm proud to do in that context as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you have, like, over the years, that is one thing that you have championed, especially the GAA and netball and stuff like that. So do you think, that there isn't enough for female sport? How do you think you can get more support out there and better facilities because football, if anybody goes to watch a ladies' football game or a netball game or anything like that, I mean, they'll see that the talent is there and the entertainment value is definitely there. So what is it that's lacking, do you think?
The talent's there, the passion's there, the commitment's there, and certainly, and obviously she's a local Armagh woman, Caroline O'Hanlon, who's a world-class netballer and obviously one of the greatest female Gaelic footballers ever to exist in this country. But I think in some ways the media has had a bit of a blind spot because, especially at a local level, if the resources aren't there to go out and cover a sport, you're relying on stuff maybe coming in from well-meaning people within the sport. it's not necessarily particularly usable. So coverage ends up quite limited in terms of space, or quite one-dimensional, because people don't know the backstories, they don't know the debates, and the debates are hotly there in female sport too, as to whether, you know, A is better than B, or what was the greatest ever final. But it isn't enough in the public consciousness for people to have those debates in the pub and whatever. So I think all that noise you get around male sport is sometimes lacking in female sport. And I think the other thing too, that sometimes there's a naivety as well, in that female sport gets a certain amount of a leg up at times, and it more than needs the leg up, of course, but then it isn't necessarily made the most of, or sometimes it's used too quickly to promote an agenda of equality. And I mean, let's not talk equality by any means, but I think female sport can stand on its own feet if it gets the foot in the door. But I think sometimes there's an uncertainty how to go about it, and there's also an uncertainty in the media's behalf as to how best to bring it in. So I think certainly at a local level, what I've tried to do over the last number of years is actually to try to cover female sport in the same way that male sport is covered, and that's really telling the stories that are out there. You know, so you're talking about all the human interest stories you get in sport, and family connections and clubs and the passion and all of that, but also reporting games as they are, as opposed to, because sometimes again, if you're allowing on clubs sending things in, they'll maybe send in details if they win a match. Next week they win a match, send in details. The third week they don't, no details come in. And a media outlet says, okay, look, we can't rely on that. So I think that consistency of coverage through good times and bad is important, you know, and female sport needs to certainly expect more, but also seek to earn more as well.
Yeah, because, you know, you could sort of say it's a supply and demand thing. People want to read the men's sport more so than the women's sport. But if it was there, and if there was more accessibility to it, and people were reading the stories, it might just get them more involved. So, you know, it could be a chicken and an egg thing. Yeah,
I think the stories are there. And now with podcasts like yourself, and even sort of nationally, there are a lot of long reads on sportswomen now, which are actually bringing out the great tales of commitment and achievement and so forth. And even in some sports, and female sports, a bit like what we would suppose maybe crudely term minority sports in another context, in that sometimes they're a bit under the radar, and occasionally a story breaks out and makes the headlines for 5 minutes, and then it gets lost again. And sometimes also as well, other angles get picked up on. So for example, the situations when there's a controversy about something, or say a Camogue wins Puck Fada and doesn't get the same prize money as the male, and that becomes a story, when a lot of the actual females in the top sports are saying, look, these stories are a distraction. Yes, they're fine in terms of somebody got a voucher for £500 and somebody got a voucher for £50, but that's actually not what it's about. It's about actually taking the real sport seriously, and all these other things will come in their own time. So I think there's a lot of work has been done by, and certainly in Sport Ireland now, Nora Stapleton, the former Ireland rugby player, she's the head of female sport in there, which is a new post, and certainly I've known Nora for a long time, and people like her are driving it, but also a lot of that Ireland women's rugby team that 6 years ago beat New Zealand and got to the World Cup semi-final in between their two Six Nations titles. And, you know, digressing, but I go back to 2002, and I remember covering a women's Six Nations game in Worcester, and Ireland lost 79-0 to England. And, I mean, if you consider the progress that has been made since then, but most of that team, Fiona Coughlin, the captain, and a lot of those players, they're all popping up now doing punditry here and there, or they're coaching and whatever. So I think we're in a generational thing with female sport too, where we need probably a generation of people, and that's not to say there haven't been great female sports people going way back, you know, your sort of Maeve Kyles, Mary Peters, absolutely, but certainly in team sports, we're at a stage where we need the first, in a lot of sports, I mean, Camogie goes back farther, but certainly rugby, ladies football, soccer, we need that generation of people to retire and move into coaching, administration, punditry and so forth. I'll give you another example. Sarah Booth, the former Northern Ireland women's soccer captain, she's now a big job in FIFA or UEFA. I'm not just sure which it is, but certainly she's working as their head of female competitions worldwide, which makes me think it must be FIFA. Yeah. But she's gone off. She ran women's football for the IFA for a long time, but again, she started off as the Northern Ireland women's captain. But people like that, increasingly over the next number of years, will have an influence as well. They'll also become more known in the media. We're seeing now,
and then they become household names.
We're seeing now. I mean, Test Match Special, which is an absolute bastion of sort of English male middle class preserve. Two of their main commentators now, Isa Gua, who's from an Indian background, and Ebony Rainford Brent, the first black woman to play cricket for England. One's a commentator, one's a summariser, and they're both now fully ensconced in that team on merit. We've seen Maggie Alfonsi as part of the rugby coverage in ITV, former England flanker and captain. We're starting to see here Caroline O'Hanlon has done a little bit with Bree Stack on RTE. Not saying she's going to be the next Joe Brawley. They're quite different people, as you know. But so I think we're going to see a certain amount of
Not
female.
sure she want to be the next Joe
No,
Brawley.
no, hopefully not. I'll fall out with her if she does. But I think we'll see more female pundits. But again, it's important that people recognise those in their own right, that they haven't been shoehorned in somewhere on the basis of tokenism or quotas or whatever else, because ultimately that will then lead people to view them in a jaundiced light and not actually listen to them on merit, because the best pundits, the likes of Fiona Cullen, Alison Miller's now doing a rugby punditry column in the Irish Independent, which also sometimes is about women's rugby, sometimes it's about men's rugby. But these people are now becoming authentic voices because they have been there, they've played at a level. Yeah, and sometimes, and obviously sports journalists don't necessarily need to have played at a high level, but sometimes I'm embarrassed where we're males who have played at a very basic level, like probably most of us have in whatever sport, that more weight is assigned to our views than a female who has actually played at an elite level. So again, I think,
in the other sense where they have like a female, maybe like Sky Sports would have a female presenter there, but that would just be a token, somebody to introduce the show, that kind of thing. That's
where that is seen as window dressing, and to some extent we've got obviously locally in this country people like Ruth Gorman, Ruth, who's obviously been a very visible face of UTV in the last number of years. But Ruth started off as a big sports fan. She's gone back. She's playing club hockey again now down the leagues, but ultimately Ruth started off as a proper sports reporter like you or me, going to matches and whatever else. She didn't just say, I want to be on TV, and what platform will I use? Oh yeah, sport. They probably need a token female to present sport. I'll be that token female. She's come through as a female who loves sport, as a sports journalist, and now she's there on your TV every evening and doing a great job. So, and I mean, another one, I remember the Rugby Writers of Ireland and Sinead Kassan from Virgin Media. She's now our first ever female chair of the Rugby Writers of Ireland, and I talked about Test Match Special. The Rugby Writers of Ireland, believe me, is a fairly traditional male bastion organisation as well, and Sinead has come through the ranks. She's contributed to the Writers Association, and she's now our chairperson, so progress.
It's definitely progress. I wanted to ask you about the games, the ladies football. Were you at the matches? 2018,
the two senior semi-finals, both decided by over 40 points. This year it's been great. As you know, it's the year of the club with no inter-county stuff, male, female. But this year, Buttercrane are sponsoring the club championships now, so it's been good for them. They've got their shop window. Sinead Reel, the Armagh LGFA chairperson, who does a great job. She's even got the weather. I mean, we've had some bad weather the last few weeks, but the matches actually have all seem to be in sunshine so far. And the quarterfinals, great stories. Clonerne hadn't lost a club championship match in Armagh except to Carrickcruppen in 15 years. Armagh Harps knocked them out in the quarterfinal.
It was a great game.
The very same night, Caroline O'Hanlon playing against Drummahill, the combined Drummond T Fork Hill team, who were actually tipped to beat Cruppen this year. People had suddenly got a sense that they might have something. Caroline scores a hat-trick in 2 minutes early on, finishes with 6 goals, but 250 yards down the road she's eclipsed by Amy Mackin.
Yeah,
Amy tore a cruciate in July last year. She'd come on in one league game for a short time, so she's brought on at half-time. Shane O'Neill's trailing at home to Crossmaglen by 2 points. Amy scores 8-1 in the second half. So, 14 goals, the two of them. So then we go into the semi-finals, and whatever combination would have worked out for the final was going to be good, because either you've local rivalry up here between, the City Club, Armagh Harps, Grange, who are just out the road. You've Dervla Mallon, their captain, she's in her 20th season of senior football. Paula Enright, the Harps goalkeeper, she's in her 20th season of senior football. So, again, if that had been the pairing, or you've got an all-Camelot clash with the two Golden Girls, Amy and Caroline, on opposing sides, or you've got a repeat of the 2015 final, which was the one final that Clonerne have missed in the last 15 years. It was between Harps and Carrickcruppen, and that's the pairing we're going to have. And, which brings me to the semi-finals last night, and I mentioned the 40-point margins 2 years ago. The Friday night game, the Saturday night game, both of them close. Grange were probably the outsiders of the four. They went down to Longspin, down to South Armagh, to Drummond T to play Carrickcruppen on Friday night. And again, the two captains, Dervla, who I've just mentioned, Caroline O'Hanlon again. You'll not find two people who are bigger institutions for their clubs in any sport, in male or female. Caroline, captain Cruppen, first 13 years, took a break for the last two. She's back as captain this year, and still the woman who makes them tick. 15 seconds in, she wins the throw-in, lays the ball off, makes a run, gets it back, slots it into the net from an acute angle. 15 seconds gone, but unlike Drummahill, Grange didn't go away. They got stuck in. Young Hannah Duffy, she's just going into sixth form now in St Catherine's here. She was only 17 a few weeks ago. She scored 9 points. She'd scored 2-6 in the quarter-final win over Grainmore. lot of young talent coming through, because we now, like unlike say 10, 15 years ago, we have Armagh underage teams, so these girls are playing together for county at underage level. St Catherine's won the All-Ireland under 16A title last year, the first time an Armagh school has done that. So Hannah, who scored 2 goals in that All-Ireland schools final, she scored 9 points. In the end, there were 4 points in it, and Cruppen won, and probably deserved to win. But Grange, again, very, very proud team. So you've Derval as captain, 5 of her nieces, the Mackle sisters, all playing in the team as well. So it's a real close-knit family club. But last night's game, I think, was the more intriguing one, because you know yourself, we've covered enough sports down the years, and it can be any sport where a team comes off a great win, a famous win, and they subconsciously dip the next day.
Yeah.
They end up getting caught, being beaten by somebody else reaps the reward of them knocking out the holders or the favourites or whatever. So I think Harps have a very, very professional setup under Paddy McShane and Joe Feeney, the former Armagh footballers, in with Paddy this year. Fionnuala McKenna, who's a teacher here in St Catherine's as well, very, very steady figure as captain. And they've had an absolute boost this year. Sinead Burke, a great Galway player, former captain. She's won an All-Star the last 2 years. She's suddenly based in Armagh now, because we've Willie Falloon to thank for that, the former Ulster rugby flanker, who is captain of the rugby club now just down the road from us where we're talking now. Willie was based down in Galway with Connacht for a couple of seasons, and they met there, and the rest is history, and she's now an adopted Armagh woman, and she's just been an absolute bonus come out of nowhere for Harps. But you know, they've got a good team. I think you saw them in the last round yourself.
Yeah,
and
they were fantastic.
Kelly Mallon, the Armagh captain, who I know you've spoken to on the pod as well. Yeah, and Kelly's had a lot of injury problems, but she's worked so hard in lockdown. She's so physically impressive now. And, you know, last night against Shane O'Neill's, in spite of Harps being on their guard, things started to go wrong early on. Amy Mackin scored a couple of classic poachers goals. They're suddenly 6 points up. Harps had lost a couple of players to injury. Paula, their goalkeeper, who I've talked about in her 20th season, gone off with a hamstring. Leah McGoldrick, who's an Ulster rugby player and former Armagh Camogie captain, she's just come back a couple of weeks ago to Harps. Hadn't played since the county final in 2015 between her other sporting commitments and injury. She'd got a bang on the collarbone, and still concerned that it might be broken, but she came off midway through the first half and came on again early in the second half. And we talked earlier, that's the level of absolute body on the line commitment, that somebody thinks they may have broken their collarbone
and still manages to come
back. They go back on again. And it was so important because they just lost a defender to the sin bin. Another defender had gone in nets in place of Paula. Aoife Lennon had to come off briefly. Leah came back on. They dug in. They turned the game round. Probably refereeing decisions, you could argue, didn't go their way either. I mean, Kelly probably had a very, very strong claim for a penalty, which was brought down very close to goal. It wasn't given. They turned it around. They went 8 up. Shane's came back. They reduced their rears to 2. There's about 5 minutes left to play, and of course there's no team more dangerous than Shane's with the two Mackins. Yeah. And you know, Shane's, I think probably at the start I presented them as, you know, dangerous dark horses and the sort of team that is always going to have, I suppose, the equivalent of a puncher's chance because of Amy's, the cutting edge that Amy provides. But I think that's probably unfair to Shane's. They are real contenders now, and I think we'll see over the next few years, because they're young players who won Armagh Junior and Ulster Junior and Intermediate titles over the last few years. They've all grown up
together.
Yeah, they've grown up together.
About that,
absolutely, and they're experienced now. And it'd be totally unfair to say that they're a one-woman team or a two-woman in the Mackins. Louise Kenny, the captain, is a great player. You've others like Moya Fee and Brianna Mallers, the goalkeepers in the Armagh panel now. Avine Jones, forward, you know, has scored a lot of goals for Shane over the years, scavenging off the back of teams panicking about the Mackins, and she's been the one who's been able to sometimes score even more goals than Amy. Yeah. So certainly Shane O'Neill's are here to stay as contenders, but the brilliant thing is, to go back to what we said a few moments ago, the fact that there are 4 serious contenders now this year. The 4 semi-finalists, and Clonerne aren't going to go away. Clonerne are going to be stung by this year. They're going to come back hungrier than ever. They have a lot of still, you know, current county players, former county players, future county players. But I think the thing that Armagh Harps possibly have this year, and yet Carrick Cruppen, look, it's going to be their 11th county final in the last 13. So they have that big game experience. They did beat Harps in 2015. But I think certainly Harps, and always look, you play with whatever you have, but Harps' age profile this year is very, very good. They've got 5 schoolgirls. McGoldrick's 21, then they've a group in their mid-20s, they've a group around just either side of 30, and then they've a couple of veterans up to Paula, who I'm sure she'll not mind me saying has had her 40th birthday last year. So they've got what looks like a good age profile, that balance of youth and experience. And you know, the young players, they're now in their 3rd senior season, so they may still be at school or just finished school this summer. But Fanula, the captain, is very, very confident in them, and she says, look, yes, they're young, but they've been there now, and so we expect plenty from them. We support them, but we expect plenty from them. And likewise, of course, that sort of boldness of youth. I think Armagh Harps this year would be disappointed if they don't go on, because certainly if they do go on and win it by beating Cruppen in the final, they'll certainly have beaten the other three best teams in the competition. Last year when they got to the final, Crossmaglen gave them a reasonable challenge in Cross in the quarter final, but they come through easily enough against a second division team that had only come up the year before, 2 years before, from intermediate, and then they hammered Silverbridge in the semi-final. Silverbridge really weren't at that level. Aoife Lennon, the former Northern Ireland Soccer International, scored 6 goals that night, so it's a bit of a thing obviously in semi-finals. I mean, digressing, but Caroline's 6-2 the other day was actually not her best performance in the semi-final. She scored 7-4 in that 2018 semi-final, and likewise Amy scored 7-7 in albeit an intermediate quarter-final in the past. So they're pretty prolific. But I think certainly lost my train of thought. But certainly this year's final, I think compared to last year when Harps went in against Clonerne and they weren't quite sure, they were excited to be back in a final. They'd been in a final in 2015. But they're excited to be there, and the experience will have benefited them. They won Division 1 last year for the first time in 25 years. Their minors won the Armagh Minor Championship, the first time the club has done that. So a lot of those young girls I'm talking about were obviously backbone in that team. But I think this time they're more ready. Also, Carrickcruppen, while they have a great record themselves and have won the county title 4 times in the last decade, whereas Harps' last one was in 1998, and Paul is obviously the only player still around from that. I think this time, playing Carrickcruppen will have less of an aura than Clonerne, and I think although Harps were trying to assimilate Sinead Burke into the team this year, and they'd had a couple of injuries at the start of the year, Leah had just come back from rugby, and the Clonerne tie seemed to come a bit early for them. You felt they had all the jigsaw pieces but had the necessary time to put them together. Well, they clearly did that night. It was a very complete performance for 60 minutes, as you saw yourself. Yeah. But I think certainly having come through that, having survived what was much, much more than a banana skin against Shane's, and even winning in adversity on the night with losing the players to injury, having a sin bin later, falling behind, not getting the decisions. I think all
stand to them.
Yeah, I think certainly they'll go into the final with a confidence, and Carrickcruppen likewise. They're canny customers. Mickey Heaney, the manager, he's one of those guys. He's an older gentleman. He's pretty comfortable in his own skin. He says certain things you don't quite know what he's trying to achieve by them, but he'll know what he's trying to achieve by them. He's just a smart guy. He understands O'Hanlon psychology wise. She has huge respect for him. The players have huge respect for him.
That counts for a lot.
People were writing them off this year, but they came to Abbey Park for a league game earlier in the season, and yes, you can say it's only a league game, but they came to Abbey Park and beat Harps in the league, and Harps were missing a couple that night, and look, league games are league games, but it's going to be an absolutely fascinating final. And with the greatest respect to Clonerne, I think the fact that they're not there means that the final won't have the same underlying narrative it sometimes does have of Clonerne will win this unless. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something to look forward to now. Absolutely. And hopefully, Richard, I'll be able to have a chat with you after that one, because you're the man with all the knowledge.
I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about. There always is with finals. There's talking points, but I think the great thing of closer games is that talking points matter. Whereas when a team wins by 20, we talked earlier off air about sometimes the scorelines in ladies' games being quite one-sided. Yeah. If a team wins by 20 or 30 points, the talking points don't really matter, because there haven't been important moments, there haven't been turning points, that the game has just followed a pattern. And even back to what you said earlier about getting crowds, about getting media coverage, there's nothing like absolute proper contests, whether it's 2 flies going up a wall or people playing football, rugby, whatever. There's nothing like competitiveness to make a story and to get interest and to even enhance rivalries, and even the atmosphere at games. And we don't know exactly what the situation will be, how the matches will be able to be in the athletic grounds, or what the crowd situation will be. But even from an atmosphere point of view, if one team's getting absolutely beaten out the gate, it obviously isn't conducive to a good atmosphere either. Really. So whereas when it's coming down to just the whole sense of jeopardy and intensity, it's all so different. And and ultimately, I think when female sport ends up in the media as well, more matches being televised or streamed or whatever. Again, and I mean, TG Cahir have done a great job showing ladies football over the last few years. But at times, before the reduced senior championship to 12 teams, there were a couple of very, very uncomfortably one-sided matches. The Pearse Og ladies got absolutely hammered in, I think it was 2015. They had one intermediate the previous year, and a lot of girls had retired, girls who'd been on the panel for a long time, including the likes of Eliza Downey, the former Ireland rugby player. And they had stepped back on a team that wasn't... I mean, Armagh had beaten them 10-22 to 0-0 in a league game in Silverbridge in Division 2. They went on into the championship, and I think it was... I'm trying to think, it may have been Cavan beat them, I think, 10-25 to 0-0 in Clonus. And the match was live on TV. Now, not only was that difficult for the players knowing that was going out to an audience on television, but obviously the like of that isn't a good shop window for female sport, because it just... people look at it and there's a knee-jerk tendency, and even on message boards and things as well, and social media, some people are out to knock female sport, and I think to some extent that's just unfortunately there. So those voices aren't important, but what it wasn't doing, it wasn't appealing to the people who would be prepared to give female sport a fair wind and say, let's have a look at this. And a lot of times they will come and be impressed with games like that. So I think it's important, while the profile and the promotion of female sport is so important, I think it's important at times the profile doesn't get ahead of the product either.
Yeah.
The product needs to be credible. You need to see people who are, committed, dedicated athletes who are able to play at a certain level. And a lot of people speak well as well. And the development of podcasts like your own and others, again, I think we'll hear more voices from female sport. People are hearing firsthand from these people about their lifestyle, and just listening to a rugby programme, Radio 5 the other night. Matt Dawson, the former England scrum half, was talking about rugby professionalism for men. Has come in 25 years ago this week, and Matt sort of dated back to playing a bit in the amateur era and then playing in the professional era, and he talked about how it was impossible now, and he thinks back on how crazy it was that he was actually trying to teach geography and PE in a school and be a rugby player as well. I'll give you an example just quickly before we finish. Emer Hayes, she's the Tullysarn Camogie captain. They beat Katie in the quarterfinals the other week, which was an upset because they'd lost the league game by 18 points to them. But she's working as a doctor in Altnagelvin in Derry. She'd been in Craigavon. So the two number 9s in the Greens Carrick-Cruppen game were both doctors, Caroline O'Hanlon and Emer Hayes. And I think they're both worth a mention, especially in this year that we're in.
Yeah.
Emer had done her long shift in Altnagelvin, hammered down the road, arrived in Drummondtee 9 minutes before the throw-in, and put in a Trojan shift for an hour in midfield. For a Greens team that were very competitive against a team that they probably were expected to be, 6, 8, 10 points off. So again, that's the level of commitment. We know with Caroline as well, like it's all been said so many times. She's working 3 days a week as a GP. She's playing semi-professional netball in England. She's captain in Northern Ireland. She's still leading the charge for Armagh. So I think, and I mean, this is sort of, I suppose, my passion and commitment to female sport is because I've been close enough to it. Really, sort of stumbled across it. 20 odd years ago, I worked for the consultancy firm that ended up sponsoring the Ulster women's rugby team because the managing director, his kids went to the primary school that she taught in, and because I was a journalist and because I was working for them, it was a kind of a no-brainer saying, look, can you get us a bit of coverage for this? Yeah. And so it's not just a charitable donation, that it's actually a proper investment. And sort of all over the years since, you've seen that commitment that's gone in, and I think because I've been close enough up to sort of see the calibre of people involved, know the stories, that's why you want to bring that to a wider audience. And I'd be more than happy. I mean, it's a great pleasure to me to actually read articles by other people on female sport locally or elsewhere, because you sometimes get tired of always telling the stories yourself. You want other people to pick up on them because as you know yourself, every different interviewer will bring different things out of a story or different things out of a person. So certainly I think variety of coverage is important too. Quantity of coverage is important, but variety of coverage is important. So that's hopefully only going to improve in the time ahead. Yeah,
and we have a golden era by the sounds of things with these clubs coming through, competitive. I think
so. And underage too is important, and schools as well. And I think we see it in other sports too. In netball, I'm a director of non-executive director of netball NI as well for my sins, and we're just about to launch our new corporate plan for the next 5 years. And certainly netball has been very exciting too, with Northern Ireland qualifying for the last 2 Commonwealth Games, playing in the World Cup in Liverpool last summer. And compared to the last World Cup they qualified for in 2011 in Singapore, Liverpool last year didn't go under the radar, and it was noticed because previously netballers would have said that playing, now it's not an Olympic sport unfortunately, but that playing in the Commonwealth Games was the pinnacle for them, even more so than their own sports World Cup, because it almost took place in a vacuum, whereas people noticed the Commonwealth Games was on, even though they were one of a number of sports fighting for airtime. But now the Netball World Cup has become established in itself and done well, and we've got, we've obviously got players locally. Francis Keenan, who was captain of Killeavy in the intermediate semi-finals, on Friday night. She's in the fringes of the senior squad now with Caroline. Caroline doesn't seem to have any intention of retiring anytime soon. She's been a starter in the Northern Ireland starting 7 for the last 18 years, dating back to just before the 2003 World Cup, when she was just leaving school. So, and just finally, very, very briefly mention the intermediate championship. There's going to be a great story for the final for it as well, because the Marley surname is a great name in Armagh football. Noel Marley played for Armagh in that 1977 All-Ireland final, was a legend for Ballyhagan. His eldest daughter Kiva, who retired from county football after 21 seasons for Armagh back in January. She's come out of retirement now to play for Lissummon, her club, in the club championship. She started her career with Ballyhagan, her dad's old club, played for them in the 2001 junior final. Her husband's an officer in Ballyhagan. I think she coaches underage there. But she and her 3 sisters, all 4 of them, played together for Armagh in that win over Cork last summer. First championship match that started together, and what an occasion to do it. All 4 of them are the absolute... they're basically the 4-star players for Lissummon playing Ballyhagan in the final. So again, you couldn't script it. But that's the sort of stories that could almost go under the radar if somebody wasn't, pulling somebody's sleeve and drawing attention to them. Yeah. And yet that's, in any sport, that's a good... Whatever the sport, whatever the gender, that's a good story. Lissummon beat Killeavy last night. And Killeavy, girl Grania Boyle and Armagh LGFA have brought in a golden boot table this year. She scored 5-12 in the quarter-final against Clanagale. She's still top of the table. Amy Mackin and her went into last night level. Amy scored 2-1, so 7 points in the senior game. Grania Boylan scored 7 points against Lissummon. So Amy's out now. She's still 2 points behind Grania. At the moment, the table, and if you take it as the 3 levels together, Caroline O'Hanlon needs to score...
Is it just in the championship, or is it? It's
just championship. Right. So Caroline O'Hanlon needs to score 8 points in the county final to win the golden boot as well.
Okay.
But I know Caroline, she's a team woman. She'll not care if she scores 2 points as long as Carrickcruppen wins. She certainly wouldn't swap that for scoring 8 points and Carrickcruppen losing. But again, it's just on credit to Sinead. It's another little element to it. And finally, if I can just give a shout out to my friend Orla Donaldson from Crossmaglen, who's spoke to her earlier today. She was in an A&E department in Sydney. She was playing in the semi-final of the New South Wales, playing camogie for the Michael Cusack's club in the New South Wales Championship. They won their football quarter-final last week. They lost today, so they're going to have to take the backdoor route, but she's sitting in A&E waiting for an X-ray on her wrist, so fingers crossed for her, and a shout out
definitely. To her. All right. Thanks a million, Richard.
As I mentioned earlier, I was at the athletic grounds where I spoke to James Morgan after Crossmaglen had a nail-biting 0-15 to 0-13 victory over a dogged Killeavy side who fought hard in the second half to get back in the game and almost did, were it not for a fantastic save by Tiernan McConville late on in the Crossmaglen goal, and some fantastic defending and a lot of really, really hard work for Crossmaglen to hang on. Here's what a really breathless James had to say after the game.
14 men, and you did it. And that was really tough, that second half. They came back, they really fought back in the second half, but you held firm. That's Crossmaglen all over.
Yeah, I think we showed a lot of resilience there towards the end, particularly going down to one, or going a man down. The legs were starting to go, and you could feel Killeavy getting more confident with the extra runner and the extra overlap. It just, you just grounded out just about at the end, a lot of... I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, no, there was, when you went the man down in the first half, it didn't seem to affect you that badly. But then I guess, the legs, it was in the legs, because before that you were really running rings around them.
Yeah, well, we started very fast, and then as time went by, just lungs were starting to open up, and you can hear me gasping here now is because I'm absolutely exhausted, and I'd say our whole defenders were sort of out on their feet there at the end. Thankfully, we had a couple of strong runners to come on. We brought on Paddy and Patsy Finnegan and a few boys that are strong with the ball. So we were trying to just hold on to it and maybe carry it, hold possession a bit more so that we weren't chasing the ball. A lot of the ball that went in towards the last, I suppose after the water break, a lot of the ball that went in, Killeavy were picking it up with sweepers and they were coming at us in droves, and we were just caught flat-footed on the counter-attack. So,
and there were quite a few wides then as well.
Quite a few wides, and it just fed into Killeavy's. You could feel them getting confident. A couple of their boys
had the momentum a bit for a while.
A couple of their forwards were on form there. They were scoring from distance, and they were and they were finding space, and they were mad to get the ball again. So I think the last 5-10 minutes in particular was all about us holding on to possession and not giving it back to them too cheaply. So we were trying to get the main ball carriers on the field, and the likes of Paddy that came on, getting the ball to Oisín and Rain, and they were just holding it and sort of seeing us out to the final whistle.
Yeah.
Even the last free that Rain took and dropped short, they were coming again, like they were coming and coming. So I was delighted to hear that final whistle, you know.
And into another final now. What are your thoughts? Any thoughts on the final?
We'll enjoy the win today.
Yeah.
It's a bit,
We'll give you that.
We're not getting that much football this year, so anytime you get a win, it's important to sit back and enjoy it.
But it's a manner of a win too, as well. I mean, if it had been just, you know, as easy as it was in the first half, I know. Okay, when I say easy, it's relatively easy. I mean, obviously you're working really, really hard to make it look easy, but a win like that, does that make it even? Is it even sweeter? You know, that you managed to really come together as a team.
Yeah, I think it does. The camaraderie's good there at the minute, and the boys are all patting each other on the back. But that'll only go as far as tomorrow night, and then we'll have to get back at it.
Yeah.
Going into the game, you know, if you look at the Killeavy team on paper, they're the strongest side we probably played so far this year.
Yeah.
They've a lot of talent. They've a lot of young forwards there that can cause problems, and that's exactly what they did out there. Thankfully, our boys just got on top towards the end and had a good enough few scores in the first half just to see it out.
And everybody all right? They've got quite a few knocks in there, but
bit of wear and tear, yeah.
You think everyone? And what about that save? That was an amazing save.
I know, it looked like it was in slow motion.
It really did.
And then
it looked like it was in the net. I thought it was actually over the line.
I know, Tiernan had to stretch. He got the fingertips to it, and then
really reactive, a reactive save.
And then Mel decided to put it out for a corner. I don't know what he was watching on TV last night, but he put it out for a corner, and then I was thinking, Jesus. But we survived that one as well, and we survived everything that Killeavy threw at us. So I think that'll put us in good stead now, preparing for the final. Maghery will be a similar team. They've got a couple of strong, fast inside forwards that aren't afraid to take you on, aren't afraid to go for scores. So I'd say it'll be more of the same in a couple of weeks.
Should be a good
one. We'll hopefully take from that. I don't know what I should be saying there. I'm just exhausted.
That's great. Well, listen, thanks a million, and good luck in the final.
Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Eye on the Ball. If so, subscribe to our podcast and to Armagh Eye. If you've any suggestions about what you'd like to hear or any comments at all, feel free to send us a message or leave a comment. And I hope you'll join me next time for The Eye on the Ball.
Black Hill Energy, heating homes across County Armagh. Fill up your tank for a rainy day with County Armagh's fastest growing fuel company. For latest prices, visit our website at www.blackhillenergy.net or call us today on 028 38 344 223. Black Hill Energy, Ansborough Industrial Park, Lurgan.